Welcome to Taking Stock, number 86. I had an interesting conversation, completely by accident the other day, when someone phoned to ask for some information and we drifted into the subject of faith. The person I was talking to said they didn't believe in God because they had no direct evidence of his existence. Now, I found it interesting that for the person concerned, they believed that for God to be God, then it has to be as the God of the grand gesture. To be fair, on biblical evidence, it's not a difficult claim to make, is it? Throughout the Bible, we see God as being so interventionist that many of the stories in the Bible end up with all the elements required to portray God as a kind of cosmic Paul Daniels, or Dynamo for the kids, constantly pulling very large rabbits out of very small hats. If you think of God like that, then the lack of parted seas and freely available fast food lying around in the desert every morning, to say nothing of 180 gallons of very fresh wine indeed, whenever any kind of celebration is in the offing, is at best disconcerting. And to be fair, even in the modern world, there would appear to be people who do believe that God is that kind of God, if there's a God at all. I don't think I have ever believed in that kind of God. I believe in a God who not only gives us a pattern for living in the life, teaching, death and resurrection of Jesus, but a God who always wants to draw our attention to the choices before us and is not above nudging us in the right direction towards the right choice, and in fact often uses other people to give us that nudge. I don't know if you've seen the film Sliding Doors, starring John Hannah and Gwyneth Paltrow. But it's a film which pinpoints one moment in a man's life, when his life changes because he manages to run down an escalator on the London Underground and just manage to catch a tube train as the doors slide closed. Something which any of us who've regularly commuted to or in London have probably done on innumerable occasions. I know I have. But then I used to work on the London bus network and the underground system for London Regional Transport, when I was doing what lots of my friends call a proper job rather than this one. The film, Sliding Doors, shows what happened because he caught that train, and also, following that, what would have happened had he not caught that train. Now obviously, out here in the real world, it isn't possible to know what would have happened if. It's all in the realms of speculation. But I wonder if you can identify your own sliding doors moment. I think I can identify at least one. I guess if I really thought about it, I could identify more, but one stands out. When I was 16 and had just taken my O-levels, or should I say O-level, and CSEs, and was at the end of that summer term waiting to go into sixth form, and I realised that most of my friends were leaving school and going to work, the feeling grew in me that I should be doing the same thing. I ended up, with the help of the Youth Employment Service, starting out as an office junior in a large and prestigious firm of solicitors in Lincoln's Inn, I won't name them, with a view to beginning training as a legal executive when I turned 17, the youngest you could start training for legal executive work in those days. I might have been an excellent legal executive, but I never got the chance to find out because I was a lousy office junior. Primarily because I was completely unable to exhibit the amount of deference required, either towards higher-powered lawyers or, more to the point, their titled, privileged, famous and fabulously wealthy clients. Apparently, there aren't many ways back, socially or professionally, when as a 16-year-old Cockney kid you invite the 17th Duke of Godmanchester to sit down over there, mate, while you phone the senior partner to let him know that there's a bloke here with an appointment for 2 p.m. Who knew? But this was only one of my egregious errors, apparently, as I discovered when I got sacked with a week's wages in lieu of notice 2 weeks into September, and ended up sitting on a bench in Lincoln's Inn Fields, close to tears, as I watched the office girls playing lunchtime games of netball. What was I going to do? What was I going to tell my parents? That was when God sent his angel. Or at least that's what we would have said if my story had ended up in scripture, I'm sure. Looking back, I am pretty sure it was an angel, but I saw her as Tracy, one of the secretaries from the third floor, who saw me sitting forlornly on the bench, saw how upset I was, and sat down next to me to find out what was wrong. After I poured out my troubles, she asked me a simple question. What would you have been doing right now, this minute, if you hadn't been working for the firm? I won't name them. I smiled. A-level history, English and art, I said. Then, she said, why not go back to your school and see if you can't start sixth form anyway? Term started 2 weeks ago, I said. Yeah, so what, she said. Will they have given up on you yet? Give it a go. Got nothing to lose. And to cut a long story short, that's exactly what I did. The next day I called in at my school, asked to see the head, told him what had happened, and promptly got told that my name was still on the registers and we'd just called the previous 2 weeks an extended summer break. In fact, said Mr. Taylor, the headmaster, looking at his timetables, Mr. Evans' A-level history class is just about to start in room A19. Hurry along, Jenkins. You don't want to be too late for your first lesson, do you? So along I hurried, knocked on the door of A19, got invited in and welcomed by Mr. Evans with, I have to say, underwhelming coolness, mildly jeered by my schoolmates, and then got told by the teacher that there was only one seat left, so I'd better sit there, over there then, next to Janet Dyer. Or was it Judith, mused the history teacher, as Janet and Judith were identical twins. Drop dead, gorgeous, identical twins, I have to say, and still are. I sat down, turned to say hi, and Janet, with whom to my knowledge in our enormous comprehensive school I had never previously exchanged a word, gave me the most glorious and wonderful smile as she said hi back. A glorious and wonderful smile which she has been bestowing on me pretty regularly ever since, as 5 years later we were married and we've been together ever since. I'm pretty certain that none of that would have happened without the nudge provided by God through the angel Tracy, who probably thought she was doing nothing more that day than strolling in the late summer sunshine through Lincoln's Inn Fields and having a brief conversation with a distraught, erstwhile office junior on her way back from her lunch break. I bet she forgot that conversation 5 minutes after she got back into the office. But I never have. I'm certain it changed my life. It was a true sliding doors moment. Something apparently awful, getting sacked from my first ever job, and it was awful, turned out to be exactly the right thing to happen because, without knowing it, I was on the wrong path until then, and I needed that nudge. So, God may not have parted the Thames at Westminster, nor set non-consuming fire to the rhododendrons in Lincoln's Inn Fields. But I have no doubt that he was present for me that day, in the person of an angel, or a secretary on the way back from lunch. You decide, because you can be sure that the God of cosmic nudges will work with your decision. Stay safe, people.